apologize in advance if you sent me a gem that I don't include here, but there's just so much we all want to say about Patti. And as she often did during our collaboration, Patti herself provided me with the organizing principle for what I would share with you today. On more than one occasion, Patti told me what her main goal in life was. All Patti ever wanted to do her entire lifetime was to hang with the cool kids and put on a show. And with that as a major criterion, Patti lived exactly the kind of life she wanted to live. I mean, just look around you. Look around you at all the cool kids she got to hang with. I'm lucky because I was there for an awful lot of it, and I got to hang with cool kids too. I wasn't there for her teenage years in Kettering, Ohio, but I've heard a lot about it, and I've met a lot of those people. She talked very fondly about Sitco, Summer Youth Theater Company, which was her first taste of hanging with cool kids and putting on a show. It really is pretty remarkable that a bunch of teenagers conceived and executed a children's theater company that lasted for years. And you know that Patti's incomparable flair for organization kicked in then. As Patti often said, we didn't know we couldn't do it, so we didn't. In the lengthy instructions that she left behind for this event, she said, be sure to throw in how much I treasured my education. From Bob Killian to everybody at NU, the lifelong friends, books, reading, research. She was our resident researcher. All you had to do was ask a question in casual conversation, and the next day she would have looked it up and provided you with a short essay on the subject. She did treasure her education, and she shared it with all of us. That education really blossomed in the Department of Oral Interpretation at Northwestern University. She liked to say that she majored in reading aloud. And it's astonishing how many people say they remember Patti from the very first day of class at Northwestern in 1969. There's some disagreement as to whether it was Dr. Green's class or Frank Galati's class, but they were all there. Bloom, Corbett, Gigliotti, Bramhall, Lundberg. Corbett assures me that no one used first names back in those days. And he says, I have no memory of 4 years at Northwestern that does not somehow include McKenny. Patti was inescapably part of everything we did, always. And Jerry Bloom says that on that very first day, we sat at the back of Fisk 112 and laughed at the same things. That's a sure sign. Patti was our Dorothy Parker, and we were her Algonquin Round Table. Carol Gigliotti has this memory of sitting in the kitchen with Patti. She is glaring straight into my eyes with those beautiful, soulful, dark eyes of hers. They are slightly hooded because, of course, she's smoking. She is talking to me very slowly, so the message will reach inside the dark place she knows I have carefully crafted for myself. And she says with a confidence that sounds to me as if she has lived through 3 world wars, born 8 children, and still managed to keep the store running, there is always a solution. There was an apartment on Chicago Avenue in Evanston. It's no longer there. Tore down. Not because of this, but... No, we don't know that for a fact. This apartment was shared by Patti McKenny, Patti Patterson, Lou Stein, and Michael J. And it was the center of the social universe for the entire interp department, both the students and the faculty, and mostly due to Patti. There's one event that many of us remember, at least I do, and it was the legendary fish fry. Patti planned it and organized it. Of course she did. But she charged Stein with buying fish. And budgets being what they were in those days, he returned from Dominic's with what he describes today as a large saucepan full of half-cooked whitebait. It was the fish fry where no one ate a single fish. She never let him forget it. Lou wrote from London last week. Although as a young director I was largely known for mounting shows by obscure Russian writers, Patti did manage to get me dancing and singing Lullaby at Broadway in some Chicago mall as a way of advertising the Chamber Theater Ensemble's Damon Runyon trilogy at Hull House Theater. It worked, of course. We all had a ball, and we got audiences. Now, there are many phrases that could serve as Patti's epitaph, but we all had a ball, and we got audiences is certainly high. I met Patti at Northwestern, too. She had a whole mythology worked out about exactly when and where we met. It wasn't exactly factual, but it made for a good story. That's all she really cared about. I don't remember the precise moment when we connected, but I do know that I probably wouldn't be a writer today if I had never met Patti McKenny. If we hadn't started writing together in the early days of studio media, of course Patti often referred to as Studio Medea, a recording studio that eats its young. It didn't eat us, but we were young, and again, we didn't know we couldn't do it. Patti loved going back to studio media in the years since those days. Working there, she was so proud of it and of everything that Scott and the guys made of it since then. We all were. It was something we built together, and it's still there 30 years later. Ronnie and I stopped by studio media yesterday afternoon, and boy, the memories of those years really came flooding back. It was during the studio media years that we got the fateful call from Jim Finger that pulled us inexorably and irrevocably into the world of industrial shows and corporate communications. It's a world we both got to know very well. But for Patti, it was never quite as much about the work as it was about the friends. Eric and Jim, and Bunkers, and Con, and Victor. It was during those years that we learned a lot about how to be grown-ups. It was during those years that our collaboration, our friendship really became indestructible. For years people have asked us, how does your collaboration work? And in 35 years, neither of us has really ever come up with a satisfactory answer. It just worked. Patti often said that we share a brain. Many people said we shared a brain. And I guess that's true, though it's kind of surprising. Two people who were alike in many ways, but we were very different in some others. But more often than not, we did agree on what's funny, what's sacred, what work has to be done, and who or what the enemy is. And that's someone's definition of a family. And that's what we were. We were more than friends. We were more than collaborators. We were family. I think that my relationship with Patti was unique, but don't you all feel that way too? I mean, every friendship she had was a singular thing, with a life of its own that was unlike any other relationship. For example, she was Robbie Lehman's poetry pal. I know, who knew that kind of thing even existed, but here's what he wrote. A few months before she died, she tried to get me to enter a poetry contest sponsored by the Chicago Poetry Center, of which, of course, she was a member. I told her I didn't have anything to submit and I'd given up on trying to publish poetry. She was very adamant. She said, "You can't ever give up. You are my only poetry friend." Besides, I just pulled my file of her poetry, and I have several things here that you could submit. You want me to send me copies of it? She was my only poetry friend, too. She was more than a friend. Who else in the world besides Patti McKenny would keep a file of your poetry for 20 years?